Welcome back to One of My Podcasting. Extra, read all about it. Hollywood Studios, spin-off superheroes in a super streaming spin cycle. There's a lot of alliteration right there, a lot of S's in the whole thing throughout. Well, that's what's going on right now with Hollywood. As the multiverses and all these different superhero or fan favorite type of things that are going on, studios lean into fan demand. That's what the Hollywood Reporter reports. Let's talk about it. To boost their streaming services, Hollywood giants are developing dozens of shows and spin-off features based on valuable franchises. Does that risk overexposure? Oh, we're going to ask that question now. After Disney Plus decided to put out for 3 of their franchises, 10 different projects each? In the next 3 years? Pray tell. Yeah, that's overexposure. That's a pretty easy answer for yours truly right here. So, on January 15th, Marvel Studios boss Kevin Feige expanded the Marvel Cinematic Universe with WandaVision, a 9-part TV series, marking the studio's first original for parent company's prioritized Disney Plus. They have 5 more shows and 4 movies slated for release in 2021. The goal is for Marvel to always have something new for MCU fans, enticing audiences to join Disney's 86 million global subscribers and keep them paying monthly. And of course, Disney just can't be second best. They want to be able to beat Netflix, which just crossed 200 million subscribers. So, for Disney Plus, they have live-action animated series coming up, as well as one-offs that include an upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. And Disney Plus shows are key to setting up characters and plot lines, he says. It really, quote, does come down to the story and having the opportunity with a She-Hulk, with a Ms. Marvel in particular, to spend more time introducing a character before we see him in a feature. That's the idea. Now, that's what's going on at Disney Plus. And Kevin Feige also says there's potential in using the service to build his movies and vice versa, as characters will weave in and out of both. Now, for example, the studio initially made a deal with Jeremy Renner to play Hawkeye in a solo movie before pivoting the project to a Disney Plus series due this year. Now, flip on over to Warner Media. They're aiming to boost HBO Max. So they've made big splashes backing Zack Snyder's $70+ million plus cut, the director's cut, the recut of Justice League. Arguably the result of fans' persistent calls to revamp the critically panned 2017 film. The studio also is teasing the concept of a multiverse. So think alternate timelines existing in the same plot line to create narrative cohesion for dozens of DC projects. To that end, after 30 years, Michael Keaton will be back as Batman in the Warner Brothers The Flash movie, which will be due out in 2022. And DC's also delving into big-budget HBO Max series. We will now have James Gunn's Suicide Squad spinoff Peacemaker, which will begin filming January 15th in Toronto, and a spinoff of the Batman with Robert Pattinson as the theatrical feature. So here's Hollywood Reporter trying to put a spin on what is obviously the true story of the overexposure here. This approach, they say, does have the risk of supplying outweighing demand. That's a lesson learned the hard way by the comic book industry, which went from boom to bust in the 1990s as big publishers planned seemingly endless launches and spin-offs of popular properties, but not one entirely unknown to studios. For instance, Paramount taking Star Trek from a successful franchise in movies and TV in the late 80s and early 90s to one considered creatively exhausted, thanks to overexposure and increasingly generic storytelling by all but the most devoted fans. The blueprint for interlocking streaming series may be foreshadowed by an experiment on linear TV, because we know how that has worked out, say for DC. Annual crossovers among its DC superhero properties, culminating in 2019's Crisis on Infinite Earths, which had an adaptation of the DC comic storyline, bringing together shows such as Supergirl, Batwoman, The Flash, Arrow, and Legends of Tomorrow, and featuring cameos from other DC series and movies. Now, Sony Pictures is drawing from it as extensive stable of Marvel movies with Jared Leto's Morbius. The feature, which is dated for January 21st, I think that actually got pushed. I don't know if it actually went out or not, will be the first of the films to directly reference Spider-Man, and it features Keaton reprising his role from 2017 Spider-Man Homecoming, suggesting for the first time that Sony and Marvel's Tom Holland movies can connect to the universe of films Sony is building. It seems there is indeed a grand plan for the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters, the name the studio has given the budding universe. So, again, we're seeing all this going on. And by the way, did you know that Jamie Foxx is now part of the multiverse? He played the Spidey villain in Electro in 2014's Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I don't know if I saw that. No, the second one with Andrew Garfield, I did not watch. He's returning for the next Holland feature, as is Alfred Molina, who starred in the villain Dr. Octopus, and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, which was the Tobey Maguire series in 2004. Now, meanwhile, for Universal's Jurassic World universe, Dominion, the sequel to its $1.3 billion grossing 2018 film Fallen Kingdom, the studio returned to its roots by casting Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum back into the Jurassic Park franchise. Stan Lee protege Roy Thomas has often told the story, relaying a perhaps apocryphal quote from Marvel Comics mastermind Stan Lee, saying, quote, "No matter what they say, audiences don't actually want change. Instead, they want the illusion of change. Studios will be towing that line ever more carefully this year. And with the writing of the fans in mind, they're not dictating the creative course or direction of what they're doing." And that's the idea of all this here. So when I look at all this, I got to say to myself, it's too much. Don't you think? I mean, I understand people being very binge-worthy and really wanting to enjoy content. And, you know, when you're looking at what's on Netflix or HBO Max or Disney Plus, and you say to yourself, well, what are the shows we're going to get to watch? Because, you know, when you look at how much has been going on, like, remember, Marvel had so many different shows they put up. They put Daredevil and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. And then DC putting some of their content over on CW for a younger audience to adapt. And Marvel, you know, put a couple of shows. Well, I mean, they put a couple of things together to try to put over on with Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I forget the other series they had. It was not that well. It did okay. So you have that going. It was one of the Captain America spinoffs. They try to do that. And again, that's not around anymore. Again, ABC's not even a part of that now. And, you know, any of that kind of content has left linear. It's never been on cable. It's now completely, almost all except for CW's content, over on streaming. And that's where all those worlds live, along with their movies in those respective leagues. So it's a lot of content there. But again, how well received will it be? And, I mean, the thing is, if you exhaust all that content over there on Disney Plus or HBO Max, you know, yeah, you want to have this stretch out for 2 to 3 years to get your subscribership up. But then they're like, okay, let's pay that off. Let's just exhaust these things. But then the idea is, and I said this before in my Broadcasters podcast, if they do this, then the idea is, well, maybe in those 3 years they'll have something else that'll keep this growing audience engaged and they won't leave. Because that's what they're going to have to figure out. Will there be enough that they can do to continue to build that up or what? And I don't know what that's going to be. But that's an answer again for the Hollywood studios. Again, spin cycle, spin cycle, spin cycle. And with that, I'll leave you until the next time here on Women on Podcasting. Thanks for listening.